The Pit Press Podcast.
Reinholz launches from downtown. No. Van Horn, no. And that's it. New Mexico wins it.
Kenny Thomas blocks. Gibson hustling down. He has some room. And he gets it.
Oh, long three. He got it.
Oh, my goodness.
Kendall Williams from 35 feet.
For the win. Snell. Got it. He got it. Wow. With 1.8 seconds remaining.
And New Mexico's going to dribble out the clock. The Lobos.
All right, a very special edition of the Pit Press Podcast. My name is Ryan Tamori. I'm your host here. Forgive the background. I'm putting up a new wall mount. Thank you, Hewlett Packard, Jacob. Anyway, it's been about 11 months for Lobo fan, and I think they've been chopping at the bit. And we have the pleasure of having a special guest on with us today. We appreciate him. First, I'm going to introduce my usual suspects, and then we'll get to beautiful sunny California. You can follow him at NM Sports Capper on Twitter. As I always say, he knows everything about mid-major basketball, at least in the land of enchantment. Mr. Jacob Neff, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Ryan. Ready to preview what I think is going to be a pretty fantastic game on Saturday.
National TV. That rings true here in Albuquerque. And from the Bay Don't Play, MVP of a Northern Filipino over 35 men's league, two-time offensive state lineman for San Juan Mendoza at the St. Pius X Sartans football team, Mr. Richard Thompson.
Thanks for having me on, man. Looking forward to this sold-out game this weekend, and looking forward to talking about this San Diego State game.
I'm looking forward to your mom wearing turquoise too. The red
she will be wearing the wrong colors, but she will be there.
That's what's important. All right, and we're happy to have this gentleman on. He came to us. He is from he's from Aztec Breakdown. You write for Mountain West Wire. Say that 3 times fast. And then you can find him at the East Village Times that covers San Diego State sports. San Diego sports, because you guys do talk Padres, and I think you talk a couple LA teams. If I'm wrong there, correct me.
Yeah, not so much. Pretty much just San Diego State for us. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
The East Village Times does those other things, but me specifically, just
you're San Diego State. Tron, just like Patron. Tron Johnson. I hope I said that right.
Yep.
Hey,
yep.
Well, hey, welcome to the Pit Press Podcast. We are very, very happy to have this collaboration. By the way, this is the first part. This is going to be featured on the Pit Press. There's going to be a second part that will be featured on Aztec Breakdown. Go find it over there. We're going to break down as much of this highly anticipated game as it can be, at least in Albuquerque. And that's where I'm going to piggyback off of for you, Tron, is you guys have done, San Diego State, that area, that fan base, that school, that program, Brian Dutcher has done things that Lobo fan can only dream of. This game is highly, highly anticipated, especially what Lamont Butler did last year in the pit, last February 25th, a day that will live in at Lobo Gabe's infamy. How important is this game to you think for Aztec fan?
It's not going to be as important because we aren't the ones out for revenge, right? So in that sense, it's not as important. It's not as emotionally charged. I think from the sense of the conference race, the key to one of these top teams, right? The Mountain West is so deep. The key to one of these top 5 or 6 teams is going to be winning a game against one of the other top 5 or 6 teams on the road. And so it's key for the Aztecs in that sense, because if they can do it early, then you're set, and you just got to win the games that you're supposed to win, basically, and you're in good shape. So it's key in that sense, but it's not going to be an easy one, I don't think.
Before we get into some of the key topics that we've selected off the record, another question for you. Were you shocked with how Tim Miles and his Spartan team played Tuesday night against the Aztecs, or does this Brian Dutcher squad in 2023, 2024 have a bullseye on its back? Because that team is completely not what it was last year. They're missing Amari Moore. The little point guard Cardenas is pretty good, but were you shocked? And from a betting standpoint, San Jose State covered, which I was shocked by, and I took it. But were you surprised that San Jose State threw that haymaker, and that San Diego State kind of responded and got and escaped San Jose with a win?
No, I can't say I was shocked. I was very nervous going into the game. I mean, even in the past, if we go back to 2020, when the Aztecs had that 30-2 year with Malachi Flynn and Yanni Wetzel, it took a buzzer beater by Malachi Flynn to beat San Jose State that year, and that was a bad San Jose State team, right? San Jose State just has a way, not all the time, most of the time it's a blowout, but every once in a while they can throw in a really good game, and the conference is good this year. And so it's add that to the bullseye that's on San Diego State's back, like you mentioned. And then also one of the things I do for the East Village Times is I write the game previews, but I try and format it closer to what a scouting report would look like for a coach. And so when you look at the game, like there's clips of things that are happening, and I try to explain why it's important and why it might not be important. And San Jose State plays a style of offense that I thought would give the Aztec defense problems, and it did. And so I couldn't say I was super surprised. It was a very stressful night. I'm also not surprised that the Aztecs found a way to pull it out in the very end. They've done it. That was like their fourth time this year where it was a close game, and maybe they were even down at the very end, and then they do a good play at the very end and come out with the win. UC Irvine comes to mind. Micah Parrish had a buzzer beater for the second year in a row against the Anteaters. So this team, they never give up. They never think they're out of it. And I think that goes back even to last year's tourney run where that happened a couple times. And so I can't say I was terribly surprised by any of it, but very happy and relieved that it happened the way it did.
And Jacob, I'll go to you on this one. As far as the Ken Palm, the net, and I wish Eric was here because he's the Evan Maya guy. How from a standpoint for UNM, how important is this game?
Well, it's super important. I mean, you've dropped 2 now in the conference. You're 1-2. You don't have a quality road win, and to be quite frank with you, your most quality win as far as a Ken Palm net standing is probably going to be one of the Big West teams like Cal Irvine or and I think Santa Barbara has really taken a deep dive too this year. So that's not even as a quality of a win as we thought it could have been. So I think our best win at this point is going to be like Cal Irvine. And when you've lost to teams like UNLV by double digits on the road, and knowing what kind of respect the Mountain West Conference gets when it comes to tournament selection time, even though San Diego State should have really helped out that narrative last year with them making that run to the title game and almost, being pretty competitive during that game. I thought that they were still competitive, even though the score might have dictated something a little different at the end. I think they still were competitive in that game. And there was, the ebbs and flows that you get in college basketball. But this is important for them. They need a signature win, and another loss dropping them to 1-3 in conference is going to be super hard to rebound from, especially when you have to bounce back and play Utah State on Tuesday night. That's going to be it's going to be imperative that they win that game, because I feel like if they lose the game to San Diego State on Saturday with the emotional high that there's going to be, it's going to be very tough to then rebound and go play Utah State on Tuesday. So this is super important for them. It's even though Utah State is a big name and technically, ranked higher at this point, the more nationally recognized name is going to be San Diego State. So when you see that on your tournament resume, you're going to think, even though if Utah State, and this is no disrespect to them, even if they, continue doing what they're doing and they finish the year in the top 25, people are going to look at the San Diego State win and say, that's one of those wins that you need to be into the tournament.
Rick, I'm going to go to you in terms of, I don't know, just your overall thoughts heading into this game. And we'll get with Tron and what his thoughts are on our overall impression of the 3-guard lineup. And we've hit that home on our last couple of podcasts, but just in general, your thoughts.
Yeah, so when I look at San Diego State, obviously it starts with Ledee, possible player of the year in the conference, competing probably with Isaiah Stevens from Colorado State. I mean, if you look at what Ledee is doing this season, he was only averaging, I think, about 8 points and 5 rebounds last year. Now he's at 22 points and almost 9 rebounds this year. Wasn't even starting last year, and now is just a total stud out there. You got to give him his props. He's also knocked down, I think, about 10 threes on the year. So he's able to do a little bit of everything. I think one thing that they were talking about on Tron's podcast is that his decision making is going to have to improve in conference play because he's getting doubled a lot, something the Lobos didn't do well last game. So I think the Lobos need to double on Ledee down low because he hasn't proved to be a very good passer or playmaker yet. He's averaging about an assist and a half. I don't think he's getting used to double teamed. He came off the bench for 4 years. When you come off the bench, as they mentioned in their podcast, you usually don't get double teamed, and I would agree with that. So I think it's going to come down to Lobos playing defense on him. But, he's not their only weapon. They have Reese Waters, who scores about 12.3 a game, and Micah Parrish, who's also able to knock down the three, a transfer from Oakland. He was on the team last year and now is, he's also in a starter role. So I think they have 3 guys that were on the bench last year now starting and all looking comfortable for the Aztecs, along with the transfer from USC, I believe. So, I just think San Diego State is a well-balanced team. They have, Trammell, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, coming off the bench. He was a starter last year, probably one of their better defenders. And, he's averaging 7.5 off the bench. That's going to give us some problems, I think, on our end because we're having trouble, the Lobos, that is, handling the pressure at the top. And, San Diego State has some of the most physical, best defenders at those spots, in my opinion, in the conference. So, also, San Diego State does have a big man off the bench, unlike New Mexico, that they can count on with Jay Pal, a transfer from the Camels. And he's not playing with a hump on his back. He had a great game last game, and he's been solid for them. He was a starter last year at his former school. So I just think this is a team that I think the Lobos need to emulate. They brought in a few transfers. They're fitting in and meshing in, but they also have guys that came back from last year that have that chemistry and guys making a leap, where the Lobos, the guys, we have Donovan Dent making a leap, but other guys are kind of staying the same and the transfers haven't meshed yet. So that's the difference I see between the teams on a high scale level.
I have to correct you. They are the Campbell Fighting Camels.
It's not, at least it's not the Joe Camels.
Yeah. He was cancelable before cancel culture was popular. Since we have somebody that has covered focuses on San Diego State, and I didn't purposely mean to jump around on topics there, but just from an overall perspective, and this is kind of a cliche, stupid question, but I was a journalist. It's what we do. How hard, and I know Darian Trammell come back, Lamont Butler, Jaden Ledee. It's how hard is it to replace, Mensah? How hard is it to replace a Matt Bradley? Did you see this team taking a leap back this year? Are they right where you want them to be? Have they exceeded your expectations? I mean, I think Lamont, I might get criticized for this, but I would say Lamont Butler's probably borderline an NBA draft pick just because of maybe the way he plays when the game matters the most. And he's a pure shooter. I was totally shocked by his free throw percentage at 44%. That blew my mind. I thought he would have been a much better free throw shooter. But to continue on with that rambling, is where is this team, this 2023-24 San Diego State Aztec team? Where are they along in this journey that is this college basketball season in your opinion?
Yeah, I think they're right about where I thought they would be, and more or less where I think the Aztec fans thought they would be. You know, when you make it a big group, there's a wide range. The prevailing theory was that they're going to take a step back on defense because how could you not? You're losing Nathan Mensah, who could guard anybody 1 through 5, right? 6'10" with a 7'5" wingspan. Your defense is going to take a step back pretty much no matter who you are if you lose that. And that's before you get into Agueka Rope and Keyshawn Johnson, Adam Seiko, all the other guys. So we knew the defense was going to take a step back, but at the same time, the defense would still be good. Looking at KenPom right now, they're 18th in the nation. So still really good, not quite that elite level they were at last year, but still pretty good. We also had the feeling that the offense would be better, which might be a little surprising losing a guy like Matt Bradley, but we knew Jaden Ledee would be, I don't think we thought he would be this level necessarily, but there was talk before he had played in a game that he had conference player of the year potential. There was talk about just his rebounding and especially his offensive rebounding and the ability to get those easy points. So that was a big thing. And then also the Aztecs last year, they played an offensive system where they would duck in both of their bigs almost every possession. And on the one hand, what that does is it helps you to get offensive rebounds, which they did quite a bit last year. But on the other hand, it just mucks up the paint and it's so hard for guys to get layups. And so they would take a lot of mid-range jump shots. The Aztec took more mid-range jump shots than most of the other teams in the nation last year, which, as we all know, analytically speaking, at the very least, is not a good shot. And they were taking a lot of them. And so this year, they aren't doing those two duck-ins. They have power forwards and Elijah Saunders and Jay Powell who can space the floor and open it up for guys like Ledee, as well as guys like Butler or Waters or Trammell, whoever it might be. Waters, Ricky mentioned from the transfer from USC, has been amazing. He's been the one guy that I was like, I undersold him coming in. I thought he would be good. He'd be a solid player off the wing. He was at USC for a reason, but he has been absolutely fantastic. And there's moments where I watch him and I'm like, he might be better than Matt Bradley. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and it basically came down to if you need somebody, if you're playing one-on-one in the park, Matt Bradley's probably a better player. He's going to be able to score better. But if you want some guy to play within the flow of the offense, you're going to want Reese Waters. He doesn't muck it up the same way Matt Bradley did. And that's all respect and all love to Matt Bradley. He was amazing. So yeah, the short answer is they're right about, I think, where I thought they'd be. And they're well on pace for another tournament bid. And once they get there, anything can happen. I think before the season, if I remember correctly, I said the ceiling was about a Sweet 16 if everything goes right. And I still kind of think that, this team is good and they are fun to watch offensively. There are still a couple flaws. Injuries have been an issue. Waters is hurt right now. Butler, it was never reported, but I'm pretty sure he was hurt. And that's one of the reasons why his free throw percentage was so low. It's been climbing up the last few games. His career percentage is up above 70. And at one point this year, it was like 29% from the free throw line. It was really bad. And I'm pretty sure he was hurt. It wasn't reported anywhere. Trammell had a shoulder issue to start the year. He missed most of like the preseason practices. And then I think he hurt I want to say his ankle or his calf at one point as well. So the injuries have been problematic. Jay Powell, if you've seen that he's wearing a mask because he broke his nose a couple games ago, that's been the thing that's kind of really held the Aztecs back and made it hard for them to get into a rhythm.
I was going to ask you about Reese Waters, but we've kind of had you on your end are having conversations about, hey, this player's good. This player might be better than our best player last year, who was outstanding. On this podcast, we've had conversations about, hey, which player do we sit? The 3-guard lineup, and we have broken it down quite a bit. And the guys that come on this show that have the X's and O's in basketball, and I wish Ed and Eric were here because they'd love this conversation. Rick, I'm going to go to you, the Neff, and then I'm going to get Tron's thoughts on what UNM is doing. But Rick, mainly because if we're having San Diego State fan listen to this podcast, Donovan Dent, Jamal Mashburn Jr., Jalen House. You have Jalen House and Jamal Mashburn Jr. that were preseason all conference. You had 2 UNM players. They've been bitten a little bit by the injury bug. What we've seen out of this complete team with all 12 scholarship players has been worse than with people on the bench. I said it pretty frequently. Where's the chemistry? I'm concerned about that. These guys are all talent, and Donovan Dent has been all 6 Avengers twice this year, and had walk-off layoff wins against the polar opposite of San Diego State, UT Arlington, and New Mexico State. I mean, Lamont Butler's hitting shots. I know it was last year, but it's hitting. They're beating. I understand they got beat on Grand Canyon, but you went to Gonzaga and kicked their ass, and then you play a formidable schedule, which is why you're 18, 19, 20, 21 in Ken Palm and your net rankings high. Rick, but your thoughts, because you're more and much better, more well equipped to answer this question. What has this 3-guard lineup with what UNM has seen thus far? What have you liked? What have they done well? And what have they not done well?
Yeah, we've been talking about this since they've all been healthy, about 2 weeks here, even when Tom Moser was on our podcast from the Top of the Mountain pod. He called it out early on, and I also saw it as the 3 of them on the court together. It seems like there's not enough of the ball or shots to go around right now. It looked a lot smoother on offense, actually, when House and Mash went out early in the season, where Dent was the main distributor. And again, we always hit on involving the posts, and sometimes we fail. The Lobos fail to involve the posts when those 3 guards are out there at the same time. So it's going to be a challenge moving forward, because Mashburn really hasn't adjusted to, I think, what they need his new role to be, in my opinion, which is to be more of a spot-up shooter and take some less dribbles. And obviously Patino knows more basketball than I, but I think there needs to be a conversation with Mash about his role and what it's going to be moving forward the rest of this season if this team's going to hit its ceiling. House, I think he's playing about the way we expected. His attitude is a little demonstrative out there, and that gets us in trouble, but I think we still have to start him and keep him on the court. I think he's been the steadiest of the 3, actually, even though his attitude is, like the stock market. Or not his attitude, but just the way his actions play out on the court. And that's good for him sometimes when it's going good, and it's not when it's going bad. I think the last game we saw Dent struggle, and that was the worst game I think he's had this season, only with 6 points, a couple assists, and I think 3 or 4 turnovers. So they haven't hit whatever we're thinking this chemistry would be. I think it's going to come down to more ball movement, more type of hockey assists, where the pass goes from 2 to 3 passes if the pick and roll play isn't there. I think, for us to hit the peaks, those 3 guys have to be able to play together. And I think their plus minus is actually pretty good. So I think they're taking a little bit too much of a beating from the media and from Lobo fan on the 3-guard lineup. I don't think it's been that bad. I just think it's going to be a work in progress here. But it's going to come down to moving the ball and sharing it. I think there's some selfishness sometimes that's being shown, and not a buy-in to what I believe the role should be.
Jacob, I'm going to you with this question. What have you seen out of this 3-guard lineup that maybe Aztec fan doesn't know?
Yeah, I think we've seen a little bit better defense this year. I can say that. I know House has been a pesky guy on the court, or as Rick would say, the pest. He's kind of the guy that we lean on to give us a spark on the defensive end. However, I can see I've seen a little bit of an improvement on the defensive end, just collectively as a whole. As far as these 3 guards, I think we've really seen, and Rick just mentioned this, we've really seen Donovan take off, right? We've mentioned on this podcast a couple times now that we think he probably is our best player. And coming into this season with 2 guards being preseason conference players, you wouldn't have thought that the guy that got left off the list would have been the one that we think is our best player, right? And that's just from our perspective, because this guy does it all. And where the other guys seem to struggle, which is they don't really involve the rest of their team. They want to get their own shots. The offense struggles to run with them smoothly because we don't have enough shots to go around. And Mashburn likes to take the ball off the dribble and create his own shot, which then totally subsides what you're doing on offense and breaks it down completely. Whereas House can run around, be a little creative, come off screens, dribble, pass, if he wants to. I would say, and he's probably our best 3-point shooter out of those three guards. And, so that's been, I would say, expected because Mashburn is more of a mid-range jumper kind of guy. And then Dent obviously is somebody that's explosive to the basket and is still trying to find his way in finding his shot, whether it's from mid-range or from the outside. I think the shock from this all is that the young Dent has taken over probably the more dynamic role on this offense where the more household names is Mash and House, and they've kind of taken a back seat to him in a sense. So that's what I would say. What we've seen from the Lobos side, what maybe like an SDSU fan wouldn't have seen if they hadn't been watching New Mexico throughout the whole year.
Tron, I'm going to go to you. What do you know about the three guards that UNM poses? Because this league, and Caden Thomas the other night, I don't know, he looked fabulous for UNLV. They look like a much better team. They don't look like middle of the road. I'm like the only one who's saying that. Isaiah Stevens, what you guys have, Darian Trammell, Lamont Butler, Marcus Shaver left. I'm just thinking about all the guards the last few years, but I think probably if you looked at, and I've said this, I'm trying not to be a homer because and these two guys know I'm not. I looked at paper. I was like, damn, these three guards are good. But what do you know about them?
I watched New Mexico more last season. This season, I've watched maybe a game and a half, which isn't the best. So I have to rely on more on the numbers than I would like to. I pride myself on the film study, but haven't done enough of it. That being said, I think, and this goes back years, I kind of started to settle down on it some last season. And I'm going to say this, it's like a controversial statement. I don't say it to be inflammatory at all. I think over the course of his career,
trust
Mashburn
me, you are on the correct podcast. Feel free.
I think Mashburn has been overrated. I think that a lot of fans see the numbers he puts up in terms of his points and they get very enamored by it. But the efficiency for a long time hasn't been there, and the defense hasn't been there for a long time. Last year, I did think that started to change. It seemed like the efficiency was getting better, and I was watching more, and it seemed a little bit better last year. And the defense was kind of up to like average level, which if you're scoring that much and doing it more or less efficiently, like that's all you need is average defense usually. This year, I can pull up real quick while you guys were talking. I pulled up Mashburn. I have him in one of the stats I track is player impact plus minus. I won't go super into it, but it's an impact stat. It tracks how many points per 100 possessions you're impacting a game. And Mashburn is one of the worst players in the league at it. According to the stat, the Lobos are a little over a point worse per 100 possessions when he's on the floor as opposed to when he's off it. That's 131st in the conference out of like 150, 160 or so players. And most of that is from the defense. Take that with as much salt as you want. It's one stat. No stat is perfect. I fully acknowledge that. It just seems to be that Mash, and I know Ricky alluded to it a little bit, like just trying to find his new role. I think that's something that's really affecting him. And if he can ever settle into that, I think it'll be better. The other thing I looked at, if you go on to evanmia.com, they have lineup ratings. And if you
Eric is completely, he's going to listen to this and he's going to be so mad he's not on this episode. He's that guy. I'm sorry to interrupt you again.
No, it's fine. It is a fantastic website. You do have to pay for more of the higher level stuff. But you can get the basic stuff for free. I highly recommend it. Shout out to Evan. You can look up the lineup, and I looked up the 3-man lineup data. And if you look at Dent, Mashburn. If you combine, or not Dent and Mashburn, Dent and House. If you combine those two and look at every other player they could be combined with in a 3-man lineup, their lineup with Mashburn is the worst. And if you do the same thing for Dent and Mashburn, the lineup with House is their best. And so that's another indicator to me that like Mashburn just isn't fitting well in his role. And those are both stats that don't indicate that he's not a good player. It's that the way he's being used isn't being optimized correctly. And with the players that they have, I don't even know to what extent you can, because he needs those shots to get into his rhythm. So that's the big one. I think House, I have a lot of respect for House as a player. I kind of think, and we'll get into this later, I'm sure, I kind of think he's the key to the game for both teams, in the sense that he seems to carry the team emotionally. So when he's feeling himself, he has a swagger about him, and the rest of the team seems to follow, and they all play better because of it. Whereas when something doesn't go his way, whatever it might be, and he starts to get, I think you guys use just the word attitude, right? When he starts to get that way, when he starts to get in those negative emotions, he also drags the rest of the team down with him. I felt like I saw that watching the Colorado State game some. And then Dent has been absolutely amazing. I was kind of doubtful when people said he was going to be a star this year, when New Mexico fans said he was going to be a star. I was like, I'm sure he's improved, but is he going to be like a top 10, maybe top 5 player in the conference? And so far, I kind of think he's been that. He's been really good. And so the Lobos have a good one for the next couple of years, hopefully. But yeah, that's Mashburn is the focus for me if you're looking to improve New Mexico.
This is more of a joke for Jacob and Rick. The most New Mexican thing I've done on this podcast, being outshined by the SDSU fan. It was phenomenal. That was great stats. We're gonna. I hope our listeners love that. One of the things, real quick, and I know we're cutting it short on time on our end, on our episode of this collaboration with Aztec Breakdown and us at the Pit Press podcast, where there's half of us tonight. But not good for continuity anyway, as I always say that. It's really, when you talk about attitude, and this is again a very New Mexican thing, and I guess you just have to be here to understand it. But Jalen House was like, "Yeah, I love watching wrestling, like WWF, WWE," and he said it in a press conference about a month and a half ago, and he was like, "Yeah, my favorite wrestler is Randy Orton, and I wasn't a big wrestling fan, but like, I wanted to hit him with like an, oh yeah, like Macho Man, or Austin 316." And I know when they go to San Diego next month, he's going to be public enemy number 1, and he thrives off of that. But you, I think, alluded it and hit the nail right on the head. Is he either it's the stock market, it's the Jalen House down, like they roll with him. Just for timing purposes, very quickly, and I'll start off with it. You had mentioned, Tron, that you were looking at other players to consider matchups. I don't know if it's necessarily a matchup. I've been bashing this home. And there's 2 people I see. We didn't even mention JT Toppin on this podcast. We might do it on yours, because he's been phenomenal. The two bright spots have been Donovan Dent and JT Toppin. What is Nelly Jr. Joseph going to do? Because this might be the biggest test. This might be him storming Omaha Beach. The test is going to be unreal for him with the bigs that San Diego State has. I don't know if he's up to the test. Lobo fan would like to see him. Is this going to be a brand new Nelly Jr. Joseph? Number 2 is the guy that I have banged home on this podcast. If I said that incorrectly, these guys are going to give me shit. I've expressed his name a million times. Is Jamal Baker Jr. Thanks for smiling, Rick. Jamal Baker Jr. We jokingly, Jacob said, half jokingly, like, how many shots is he going to take against UNLV? How many threes? He goes over under 3.5. He took 2. He is potentially a shooter. I feel that if he gets hot and is hitting mid-range and threes against San Diego State on Saturday, this is very good for the Lobos, and this is very good San Diego State might be in trouble. I think if he's knocking down some shots, if he can put up 5, 6, 7 threes and hit at least 50% of those, the Lobos are going to be in the game. Jacob, just very quickly, are there any matchups you're looking forward to Saturday?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think Jalen Ledee and Nelly is, I mean, you hit that on the head, right? I mean, we've struggled now for the better part of the last couple of games with just physicality, mental toughness, down low to rebound, stepping up to the line and making your free throws, playing aggressive. And if you want to succeed against Jalen Ledee, if you can even call it that, because we know how talented of a player he is, you are going to have to show up and be ready to be in a dogfight on Saturday. And just from what I've seen out of that, out of him this year, I will say that it is going to be a significant step up for him to be able to accomplish that on Saturday. The other matchup I like is Reese Waters, and kind of who is going to be the person. And I don't know. I know you said he's been injured, but he's still been playing, so I would expect him to be good to go for Saturday, and barring some crazy thing. But how he fits in the offense, and how he's a guy that I could see giving us problems, because House is not going to be able to guard him as well as Parrish or Butler. I mean, I'm assuming that House is going to be, guarding the on-ball guard. Reese Waters moving around, that's going to cause them a lot of problems, right? And that's something that Tron mentioned before this, is he moves around in the offense like crazy. He can handle the ball. He could come off screens. He could shoot threes. But the one thing that I think we could struggle with him is he does have a way of getting to the free throw line. And when he gets to the free throw line, I mean, the guy's like an automatic. It's automatic. He's shooting like 97% from the free throw line this year. And that's going to cause major issues, because it's going to have to be Mashburn or it's going to have to be Dent. And when you start thinking about that, we've talked about, Tron mentioned the lack of defensive efficiency. If you do put Mashburn on him, he's somebody that could light us up, right? And that will start, the frustration that we've seen from this team is if this guy's scoring on the other end and you're unable to find yourself and your offensive rhythm on your end, you're going to be getting demoralized on the defensive end, and you're not going to be accomplishing it on the offensive end. So I like that matchup of who guards Waters and how we contain him. And then obviously Ledee versus, Nelly is going to be a big thing, because if they're, and we know they're watching film, it's been very apparent that the glowing weakness for the Lobos is down inside, and they have one of the most physical people in the conference to take advantage of that. So those are the matchups I see.
Well, we definitely know Brian Dutcher and his coaching staff are watching film. About the other the other school, I don't know.
It's unfortunate.
I'm going to get reamed for that take from UNM. Anyway, hey, Rick, you did the matchups here, and I did the finger gun to you. Your matchups that you're looking forward to on Saturday.
I think you guys covered most of the matchups. I think the other one to look at is just Donovan and Dent and House handling the pressure that the Aztecs are going to put on us and our guards. I mentioned in our last podcast that Dent had a tough last game, and it was partially due to the pressure that UNLV was putting on him at the top of the key and just crossing half court. He was struggling. So for me, it's, can the Lobos get into their offense on time and early, or are they going to have problems just getting into it again, where the possession turns into a scramble mode? And like you mentioned, I think the biggest matchup is going to be coaching. Lobo fans have been asking for Patino to make some adjustments. In the second half, we've been flat the last 3 games. He failed to change the defense when we were getting dominated in the post last game. So what are we going to do with Ledee? I think it's going to come down to coaching, coming in, preparation, and then also changing coaching and, what their strategy will be in the second half of the game after seeing the first half.
Tron, what matchups are you looking forward to on Saturday?
I mean, I think you guys covered them all. And I think I'd like to get a little more specific into a couple of them, specifically Ledee. But I think that might be a good thing to do heading over in part 2.
No, totally fine. This is part one of the Aztec Breakdown and the Pit Press collaboration. For those in Southern California, an Aztec fan, Aztec alumni all around the country, all around the world. Hey, we're the Pit Press Podcast. My name's Ryan Tamori. I'm one of the co-founders. The two guys below that are on the Three Stooges on this podcast, Mr. Jacob Neff, Mr. Rick Thompson. Appreciate their time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ryan.
And before we get going, just if you want to follow us, because if you're a San Diego State fan, I talk a lot of crap about UNM, so I'm sure you'll appreciate it. And I'm an alumni. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on X, formerly as Twitter, at the Pit Press Podcast or Pit Press NM. Talking way too fast. Follow us on Instagram at the Pit Press NM. We also have a website. It's the Pit Press NM. We put a lot of work into it. Tron Johnson from the Aztec Breakdown. Hey, man, we'll see you on the other side. Appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.